Hey guys, tonight we drift back, way back. You're standing under a faded sky in a wind-swept field. The twin rivers of the Fertile Crescent murmur softly to the east, and the whisper of date palms brushing each other hangs heavy in the air. You watch as a farmer hauls reeds across his shoulders, sweat darkening the linen tunic at his back, while clay ovens bake flatbread in yards fenced with woven brushwood. But forget the gentle charm. You're about to step into a winter that does not care if you're cozy. Because tonight, you're not royalty or a robed scribe with sandal privileges. You're a medieval peasant in a world where central heating means piling manure against your wall, and a spa night involves not freezing to death in your sleep. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you are. It's always fun to know who else is chilling under the stars with us. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your breath fogs the inside of the hut, not because it's chilly. No, it's colder than that. Your breath rises like steam in a bathhouse, except there's no bathhouse. Just a single, smoky hearth sunken into packed earth, the faint orange glow of embers barely holding on. The walls are wattle and daub, twigs and mud, and the wind outside howls like it's got business inside. You're crouched low, knees pulled into your chest. You wrap yourself tighter in your only thick layer, a cloak made of coarse wool, stiff with days of frozen sweat and the occasional goat hair. Under that, a tunic. Under that, regret. The hearth beside you hosts a modest barley fire, and it's not really a fire anymore. It's more like a stubborn memory of fire. You'd feed it more, but there's no wood. You already burned the bench. And yet, it's better than the outer huts. You're in the family dwelling, if you're lucky. If not, you're out in the lean-to with the unmarried sons, who sleep on straw pallets shared with rats and each other's feet. The ground is dry, though the floor creaks from frost underneath. A fringe of icicles glitters from the inside of the ceiling beam, a poetic detail that'd be more charming if they weren't dripping on your bedding. You've stuffed old rags and bundles of flax into the roof's corners to keep out drafts. It helps, barely. Outside, the land sleeps under a crust of ice, but inside, everything's awake. Mice skitter near the sacks of barley. A chicken, who apparently didn't get invited to the roost, has taken up residence near the fire pit, occasionally blinking at you, as if to say, you're doing this wrong. The only warmth, really, comes from shared body heat. You huddle beside whoever's closest, mother, brother, the neighbor's kid who came to help thresh flax and never left. Nobody's picky. There's no such thing as personal space here, just survival radius. That smoky smell that clings to your hair, that's from weeks of burning barley stalks and sheep dung. Mesopotamian peasants did the same, by the way. Circular hearths, bundled reeds, dung-fueled fires. Efficient, nasty, and historically effective. And still, historians debate whether Mesopotamian houses had proper chimneys or just holes in the roof. In your case, just a gap where the roof never sat right. You stare up and thank the stars for not snowing inside, yet. The air in the hut is so dry, Your nose has given up bleeding. It just crusts now. You dab at it with a bit of linen torn from your only undershift, already stained and stiff. Nobody's clean this time of year. There's no water for bathing unless you break the ice in the trough. And you did that yesterday. You're still shivering, just as your eyelids begin to flutter, lulled by the crackle of the fire and the distant groaning of trees. You hear the sound. Creak, snap. Something's out there. Probably just a branch under snow. Or maybe a fox. Or maybe old Merrick's goat again. He never fixes that pen. Or, wolves. Could be wolves. You inch closer to the hearth. Toss in a few dry reeds. They catch, flaring up and sending sparks against the wall. You cover the fire with a pot lid to tame it. Still awake? Yeah, you are. Because medieval peasants didn't sleep through the night. They had first sleep and second sleep, with a waking hour in between where they told stories, tended coals, prayed, or just sat silently watching their breath rise into the beams. You, right now, are somewhere between those sleeps, half aware, hungry, wondering if you dreamed that the fire hissed a word at you. Maybe you did. Maybe it whispered, "Another winter's coming." Or maybe it said, "You should have stayed with the pig." You wake up with straw in your mouth and your spine shaped like a question mark. There's a faint sour smell of turnips, flatulence, and feet. Not that you can identify where one ends and the other begins. That's the thing about sleeping on a communal haybed. It's never really yours. It's never really warm. And it's never truly clean. The straw pokes through the thin linens you managed to salvage from your aunt's wedding chest. A gift she'd curse you for using this way if she wasn't 3 years buried. Your breath is still misting when you sit up. The window slit across the hut's far wall glows a dull winter gray. That's not morning sun. That's just the cloud-blanketed lie the sky tells you before actual daylight. The hay is stiff in places, flattened in others, and every inch smells like every nightmare you've ever had. You try to remember the last time this pile was changed, probably before the frost set in. The theory is, if you lie still enough, the lice stay dormant. But your neck itches, and you're certain that if you shift too hard, you'll disturb whatever ecosystem has claimed your collar. Outside, a dog barks, not yours. You haven't had a dog since it wandered off last solstice looking for a warmer family. You look across the room and see little feet poking from the bedroll opposite yours. One belongs to your younger cousin. The other, wait, no, that's just a turnip someone used as a pillow, again. The hut's roof groans. You hear the slow drip of ice melt falling through the patched thatching and landing squarely on what used to be your best wool sock. It's soaked now, and probably frozen again before you'll be able to wear it. Someone outside shouts something about the baker's wife slipping on the ice near the pigsty again. You try to care, you really do. But your dreams last night were strange. Something about a sheep speaking Akkadian and offering you a warm bowl of stew in exchange for your shadow. Could be worse. You've had scarier dreams. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants actually experienced the same kind of REM sleep cycles we do today. What we do know is that sleep was fragmented, often interrupted, and deeply uncomfortable. You had first sleep, second sleep, and if you were lucky, no one died in the interim. The wolves howled sometime after midnight, distant, but close enough to make your younger brother whimper in his sleep. You pulled the blanket tighter around him, even though that meant your own shoulder was exposed to the air. It took an hour to warm it back up. Now, with the day not yet begun, and the fire just a whispering ember, you debate whether you want to move. Your joints vote no. You do it anyway. You stand, awkwardly, like someone's old puppet being yanked by tangled strings. Your legs crack. Your knees protest. Your toes are numb. You jam them into your boots, crusty, curled, stiff with frozen sweat, and immediately regret everything. You make your way across the room, avoiding the spot where the floorboards gave out last autumn and where the neighbor's chicken occasionally lays surprise eggs in the hay. Not that anyone's found one in weeks. She might just be mocking you at this point. And now, the real joy of the morning, relieving yourself. You step outside, breath streaming from your lips like you're smuggling fog. The outhouse is technically there, but it's just 4 posts and a thatched lid leaning at a hopeful angle. Inside, the pit is a frozen monument to past regrets. You consider just using the slop bucket from last night, but someone already beat you to it and didn't empty it. Probably Blotchy the pig. Oh yeah, Blotchy. You hear him grunt somewhere in the side stall. He's the pride of your winter strategy, a big, surprisingly affectionate hog who provides both warmth and complaints. He hates the cold as much as you do, so you've spent many a freezing night spooning your porky roommate. The warmth is undeniable. The smell, however, well, medieval survival had trade-offs. The ancients had similar tricks. In Mesopotamia, animals were frequently kept in or under domestic dwellings during harsh seasons. Donkeys, pigs, and goats warmed the earthen floors while families slept nearby. The phrase cozy didn't quite apply. You head back in, fingers now completely numb. You hold them near the hearth, but keep a distance. You've already scorched your sleeve twice, trying to warm up faster than physics allows. Your mother, or someone's mother, it's all collective at this point, is kneeling near the embers, blowing gently into the coals through a long reed. Her breath creates tiny sparks, each one a hopeful flicker in the cold. Behind her, someone's toddler stirs and groans. No school, you mutter softly. Someone laughs, muffled. Probably the only joke today. As the fire returns to life, casting shadows on the soot-streaked walls, you settle back onto the floorboards. You pull the itchy cloak over your knees and listen to the new day yawn open. Somewhere far off, the monastery bell rings. It's time to pretend you're grateful for this life again. You're dressed now, or at least you've put on more layers than yesterday, which is saying something. The outer tunic is scratchy and smells faintly of mildew, while the underlayer sags where it used to cling. You've wrapped your legs in woolen rags, tied with twine and optimism, and on your head, a felted cap that could easily be mistaken for a boiled potato. Today's survival strategy is layers, not fashion layers. Just as many layers as you can humanly wear without becoming a walking scarecrow. You're starting to understand why the paintings from the time don't show people smiling. It's because they couldn't move their arms. There's something both hilarious and tragic about your current outfit. A lumpy tower of fabric bits stolen from the dead, traded with neighbors, or repurposed from sacks that once held grain. You've even used a strip of old linen to wrap around your thighs. Mid-thigh chafing is the silent killer of peasant morale. Historians still argue whether peasants truly dressed in layers or just shivered through it stoically. But evidence from burial sites suggests layered wool, linen, and fur were common, even if most of the fur came from animals that didn't part with it willingly. Outside, your boots crunch on the frost-bitten path as you make your way toward the animal shed. Your breath clouds before you in thick, slow puffs. The wind slices across your cheeks like a judgmental priest. The path curves slightly, leading past the neighbor's hut, where someone has already tossed last night's dishwater. Now, a crystalline sculpture of splash and shame. You step around it, slipping slightly, but catching yourself on a fence post that immediately falls over. Classic. The animals are huddled together in the shed, their breaths rising like a fog bank. You check on Blotchy first, who greets you with a grunt and a stare that says, "Where's my breakfast, blanket thief?" You toss him some root scraps, and he makes a sound so human it gives you pause. The sheep are pressed together in a woolen blob. They don't even look up as you pass. The chicken is roosting on the goat again. Apparently, they've reached some kind of winter truce. You spend a few minutes clearing the worst of the frost from the doorway, then step back inside the main house. Your fingers burn now that you're warming up again. It's the kind of pain that feels like punishment for being cold in the first place. Someone's stirring a pot near the hearth. Thin soup, always soup. Today, it's root and barley water with a garnish of whatever we found. Could be wild garlic. Could be a weed. Could be a leftover knucklebone. You accept a bowl with thanks and try not to chew it too hard. Some of the things in it aren't meant to be chewed. Still, the warmth is everything. You sit on the floor and pull your cloak tighter, slurping slowly. One of the younger kids crawls over and leans against you. You're now their personal radiator. That's your reward for surviving to your current age, becoming a human heat source. You glance toward the ceiling, where the thatch hangs low and frosted. A few icicles dangle like knives from the rafters. And you think, what a wild thing, to live in a home where the inside has frostbite. There's a Mesopotamian carving that shows a man crouching near a reed house, warming his hands beside a fire pit, while a dog sits beside him, its tail curling protectively. Some scholars say it's a symbol of domestic stability. Others say it's just a really accurate depiction of survival. Man, dog, fire, and the eternal struggle not to freeze before spring. You lean your head back against the wall. It's damp and it smells like smoke and mold, but it's solid, and that's something. Outside, the village is beginning to stir. You hear the distant clang of an iron pot being struck, someone signaling work duty, or maybe just trying to break the ice on the well. You ignore it for now. You've earned 5 more minutes of barely warm peace. A child somewhere starts to cry. Someone drops something mo. You hear laughter. Not joyful laughter. More like the brittle, too cold kind that says, "This is funny because it's not tragic yet." You stare into your bowl. A bubble rises and pops, sending a single drop onto your already filthy tunic. You laugh too. You really hope that was garlic. You're outside now, fully immersed in what might generously be called daylight, though the sun is nowhere to be seen. A thick mist rolls low across the ground, and the air feels wet without the courtesy of rain. You squint upward, half expecting the sky to finally fall, just to get it over with. Your task this morning: gather firewood. There's only one small problem. There is no firewood. There hasn't been proper firewood since 3 villages ago, when the last grove was cut down and redistributed for the good of the community. A phrase which almost always means you get nothing but smile about it. So, instead, you hunt for fuel the way medieval peasants always did, creatively. You poke around behind the animal pens, prying loose frozen stalks of barley straw. You gather dried weeds, cracked fence twigs, a few pieces of old dung that have solidified into a kind of medieval briquette. Some you even chip from walls where they were plastered months ago, originally intended as insulation. Welcome to peasant resourcefulness. If it burns, it's fair game. And you know what? It will burn. Sort of. Briefly. If you close the door and huddle over it like a greedy dragon with a warm secret. A flock of birds takes off nearby, startled by someone's angry voice. Probably the reeve yelling at a boy who forgot to sweep the church steps again. You duck your head and keep moving, your basket already halfway full with flammables. None of it dignified, all of it essential. Your hands are stiff as you gather it, fingers curling in protest. You shove them under your armpits now and then, a trick you learned from your uncle, who used to lose parts of his ear every winter. His ghost sometimes visits your dreams, not to haunt you, just to complain about frostbite. The village path you walk is frozen into hard ruts, lined by rough huts with sloped thatched roofs, their beams sagging under frost. Occasionally, you pass someone else gathering fuel, an older woman carrying a bundle of sticks almost as tall as she is, and 2 kids dragging a broken stool that will soon become tomorrow's cooking fire. "Don't burn the legs too fast," the old woman calls. "They're the only part that stays lit." You smile politely and trudge on. It's a grim ballet of survival, one where dignity is optional, but splinters are guaranteed. Historians still argue whether communal fuel stores existed in smaller villages or whether everyone fended for themselves. Either way, the results were the same. Every man, woman, and child learned how to assess whether a fence post was really still doing its job or just waiting to become kindling. You loop back toward your hut just in time to see your neighbor chasing his chicken away from the food scraps bin. The chicken wins. Inside, the fire is down to glowing coals. You dump your basket of not quite wood into the corner and begin feeding the fire piece by piece. Barley stalks, a bit of dried manure, something that looks like a fragment of broken broom handle. It flares, sputters, and then settles into a smoky pulse. The smoke rises directly into your face, of course. You cough. The toddler nearby claps in approval. Your mother mutters something about bringing in more water. You nod, pretending you didn't hear. The water bucket is frozen solid, and fetching more means prying open the village well cap with a rusted iron bar that no one wants to touch. You'll do it later. Maybe. Instead, you grab a ladle and help stir the pot of whatever's bubbling now. This time, it's mostly parsnips. With a bonus ingredient, mystery. It's better than the last batch. That one tasted suspiciously of mittens. By noon, though the sun still refuses to show its face, the warmth from your breath and the fire combine into a kind of clammy comfort inside the hut. People come and go. A girl returns from the woods with an armful of brush. A man drops in to borrow a flint and stay for a moment of heat. A goat wanders through the doorway, is shouted at, then wanders out again, unbothered. You sit near the hearth and start sharpening a small stick into something vaguely useful. A spoon, maybe, or a pig-poking tool. It's hard to tell. The rhythm is soothing. The warmth at your feet is enough to keep your toes from complaining for a while. Somewhere deep in your mind, you think about ancient Mesopotamia again. How those people also hunched beside fires, fed them with reeds and dung, waited out the cold. How archaeologists still uncover tiny clay hearths nestled in the corners of their homes, proof that they fought the same icy silence with stubborn hands and smoky breath. And you wonder, did their kids also clap when someone coughed? Did their goats also walk into rooms like they owned the place? Probably, because some things never change. You glance around at the makeshift hearth, the sagging ceiling, the pile of fire-hungry bundles in the corner. Then you look down at the stick in your hands. Definitely a pig poker. You're starting to think your only real job this winter is not dying. Every task, every thought, every movement is just a strategic shuffle to avoid being the next sad story passed around the stew pot. But that's peasant life in the cold season. Equal parts stubbornness, soup, and selective optimism. Today's priority, insulation. Not the fancy kind, not even the sort of effective kind. You're about to do the medieval version of home improvement, and it mostly involves stuffing moss into holes. You begin with the northern wall, where the wind has learned all your weaknesses. Each gust finds a new crack to whisper through, chilling your spine and mocking your effort. The old thatch roof creaks with every breeze, reminding you that it was built to last a season, not centuries. You gather bundles of dried grass, stray tufts of sheep wool that no one wanted, and a bit of straw mixed with mud. The result? A concoction that smells like wet hay and barn breath. You press it into the gaps in the wood slats with frozen fingers, mumbling little curses with every jab. Somewhere between the wall and your numb knuckles, a splinter makes itself at home. You let it stay. You're too cold to care. Historians still debate the precise materials used for peasant insulation. Some evidence points to layered reeds and dung, while others mention moss-packed walls in forested regions. Either way, medieval insulation was less about efficiency and more about desperation. Above you, the ceiling leaks a slow drip of melted frost, which has carved a groove into the earthen floor. You plug the roof with what can only be described as a hope-soaked sock. It sags immediately, like it's embarrassed by the attempt. And yet, this is survival. It's not glorious. It's not poetic. But if you can stop the wind from giving you frostbite in your sleep, you're winning. Behind you, someone sneezes. Violently. It echoes. You're next. You mutter to no one. You recall your cousin catching a chill 2 winters ago that turned into something worse. Lung rot, they called it. A catch-all term for anything that made you cough until you stopped moving. He lasted a week. Then they burned his straw bedding and gave his shoes to your uncle. You glance over at your current bedroll. It's slightly damp and smells like fermented cabbage. Not ideal. Your hands now covered in mud and moss, you switch to the floor draft. That's where the worst cold seeps in, right between your toes, always finding that exact spot where your soul lives. You push dried manure along the baseboard cracks. It's warm for now. For now. You don't ask why. You pause to stretch. Your back pops like an old scroll being opened. Then you hear it, a groan from the hearth. The fire's dying again. You rush over and toss in a few of the precious frozen twigs you hoarded from yesterday's gathering. They flare up briefly, throwing orange light on the soot-black walls. The warmth hits your cheeks like a compliment from someone you admire. Brief, surprising, instantly suspect. You sit back, rubbing your fingers together. One of the kids is trying to sew a hole in their mittens with a needle that looks more rust than steel. You help them untangle the thread, knot it 3 times, because 1 isn't enough and 2 is tempting fate, and hand it back. They grin. You feel useful. A wild moment of pride warms you better than the fire. You reach for your cup, once a prized possession, now a cracked chunk of ceramic with a personality, and sip the lukewarm barley water someone reheated. It tastes faintly of burnt wood and dirt. So normal. Suddenly, someone bursts through the door shouting about a tree branch falling near the chapel. A whole branch, the kind that burns longer than 5 minutes. Everyone in the hut turns. You all rise like one slow, joint-cracking monster. Boots slam, cloaks are grabbed. The hunt begins. You follow the group, stumbling over ice and old snow toward the chapel hill. And there it is, a miracle of wind and weak bark. A branch the size of your leg. Mine, someone yells. Fair's fair, another counters. You stay quiet, inching closer, watching the scuffle unfold like a ritual. After some shouting, finger pointing, and one impressive sneeze, it's decided the branch will be split 3 ways. You get the smaller piece, but still, it's more fuel than you've seen all week. You cradle it like a baby, and as you turn to walk back, wind slicing across your nose, a tiny snowflake lands on your lip. You stop. It's the first snow of the season. You sigh, not in awe, just in resigned horror. You wake in the dark. Not midnight dark, but morning dark, the kind that carries the distinct aroma of regret and smoke. The fire has gone out again, because of course it has, and your breath is visible in the air, like a whisper from the underworld. You sit up slowly, peeling the damp blanket from your body like a layer of old pastry dough. Every joint protests. Your knees, your back, even your toes. They've all formed a mutiny. You ignore them. There's no union for peasant body parts, just silence and suffering. You reach for your boots, frozen stiff beside the bed. It's like inserting your feet into twin tombs. You grimace, but your feet are now marginally better than frostbitten. Probably. You're afraid to check. Across the room, someone's already up, poking at the coals with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for angry hornets. The embers flare faintly, glowing like ancient Mesopotamian votive lamps, though those, at least, didn't stink of sheep dung. Today's objective: prepare for the storm. Word spread through gossip, groaning trees, and the eerie silence in the birdsong that a winter squall is coming. Not just cold, colder. As in, don't bother boiling water, it'll freeze before you sip it cold. The hearth is the heart of the home now more than ever. You and a few others begin reinforcing it, stacking every burnable thing nearby. Even the broken door latch is up for grabs. Sacrifices must be made. A pot of thin porridge is set to warm over the low fire. It consists, mainly, of barley, water, and a faint suggestion of flavor. You chew it slowly, mostly because your jaw doesn't want to move faster. Someone tells a joke about how noblemen never freeze. They just complain that the wine is too chilled. It gets a weak laugh. It's good to laugh, even if you sound like a broken bell doing it. You go outside to check on the animals. The air bites hard. It's not wind, it's something meaner. The kind of cold that doesn't just cut through fabric, it cuts through personality. By the time you reach the pens, you've lost most of your optimism and half your ability to feel your ears. The pig stares at you, unimpressed. He's burrowed into a mound of straw like some smug winter god. The chickens huddle together in a feathered panic. One of them sneezes. You didn't even know chickens could do that. You throw them extra scraps. They peck at the frozen offerings like archaeologists discovering disappointment. You patch a hole in the goat shed with a piece of broken basket, jam a rock into a loose beam, and mutter a brief prayer, half to the gods, half to the goat, who may actually outrank you in warmth hierarchy. Historians still argue how much superstition played into winter preparations. Did peasants truly believe chanting could ward off storms? Or was it just something to do while rubbing their hands near a fire? Regardless, you mutter a few charms under your breath. Couldn't hurt. Back inside, preparations continue. Everyone is stuffing cracks, rolling up spare cloth for draft stoppers, and reinforcing the door with a beam that's more ceremonial than effective. You hang another thick blanket across the entrance, hoping it slows the incoming wind, or at least gives it something to trip on. There's talk of sleeping in shifts tonight, rotating places by the hearth, so no one freezes stiff while dreaming about boiled onions and warm socks. The youngest child keeps asking why you don't just move somewhere warmer, like the castle. You tell them that castles are colder than churches and filled with people who wouldn't share their soup even if it were made of gold. They stare blankly. Fair. By late afternoon, though it still looks like dusk, the air grows unnaturally still. That's when you know it's coming. The calm before the snow. Even the dogs stop barking. You don't like it. Nature's being polite, and that's never a good sign. The sky turns that familiar, ominous shade of steel wool. A distant howl of wind rattles through the trees like an omen clearing its throat. You step outside once more, mostly out of defiance. The first snowflakes are slow and fat, innocent lies that whisper, "I'm pretty, not deadly." You're not fooled. You go back inside, bar the door, and take your seat by the fire. The heat barely reaches your fingertips, but it's something. Someone starts a story, an old tale about a boy who survived the Great Freeze by wrapping himself in dried eel skins and singing to the hearth spirit. It's ridiculous, of course, but everyone listens, quiet, focused. It's not about whether it's true. It's about whether it helps you believe you'll still be breathing when the sun rises again. Outside, the wind begins to scream. You pull your blanket tighter and whisper to the hearth spirit, just in case. The wind doesn't howl tonight. It whistles, shrieks, laughs, as if the weather itself has decided to become a character in your sad little drama. It rattles the shutters, snakes under the doorframe, and creeps along your neck like a jealous ghost. Every gust feels like a dare. Every creak in the rafters says, I could collapse at any moment. Just say the word. And yet, somehow, you're still warm. Barely. That miracle is thanks to your new sleeping arrangement, the heap. An ancient peasant tradition, not recorded in many noble chronicles, the heap is what happens when 6 or 7 people, and maybe a dog or two, pile together under every available blanket, cloak, and hay scrap for a collective body heat gamble. It's not elegant. It's not comfortable. But it works. Kind of you're wedged between your cousin, who snores like a rusty gate, and a toddler with cold feet and a vivid imagination. Across from you, someone's elbow is in someone else's ear. The dog is asleep on someone's chest. A chicken is here too. No one remembers why. Breath fogs the air. Your nose is frozen, but your armpits are boiling. You find the precise temperature where survival and misery shake hands. Above you, the roof groans under a weight you don't want to quantify. You pray it holds. You also pray the toddler doesn't start talking again about the ghosts that nibble feet. You close your eyes, not to sleep. Sleep is impossible. But to drift, to let your mind roam. You picture ancient Mesopotamians, wrapped in woolen cloaks, sleeping by reed fires along the Euphrates. Maybe they had heaps too. Maybe their children complained about ghost foot, just like yours. Archaeologists rarely find the complaints, just the bones. Historians still argue whether Mesopotamian peasants slept in family piles or on separate mats. Evidence is scant, but you know the truth in your bones. When it's cold enough, everyone becomes a spoon. A sudden gust hits the wall like a slap. A child whimpers. Someone mutters a curse not suitable for church. You get up quietly, careful not to disturb the living sculpture of limbs and blankets. Your body protests, joints cracking, spine groaning, but you shuffle to the hearth. The fire is nearly out. Of course it is. You coax it back with the last of the good twigs. A curl of flame licks the dark, and you feed it carefully. Dried roots, scrap cloth, a carved spoon someone left behind. Sacrifices must be made. You sit by the hearth, hugging your knees. The warmth doesn't spread far, but it's enough to thaw your eyelashes. You listen to the wind trying to tear the world apart and think, at least it can't get inside. Then, thud, something hits the roof. You freeze. A moment later, a piece of thatch falls to the floor, shedding ice like dandruff. You grab a broom and wedge it into the hole. Problem solved. Kind of. The fire crackles beside you, casting soft shadows. You see your breath rise, dance in the warm flickers, then vanish. You wonder if Mesopotamians saw spirits in the same way. Fire ghosts, smoke demons, hearth gods. You like the idea. In the corner of the room, a shadow moves. Just the dog, turning in place. You pour a little water into a clay mug and set it near the fire. The water steams. The cup hums with life. You sip, and it tastes like warm rock, better than nothing. The toddler wakes up briefly, points at you, and whispers, "The foot ghost is watching." You nod solemnly. Good. He owes me rent. They fall back asleep. Somewhere in the distance, a tree cracks under the weight of the storm. You feel it in your chest, like the land itself is groaning. Your eyelids droop, the fire pulses. Your body, worn from cold and worry, finally begins to let go. The room fades. The wind fades. Sleep takes you not like a friend, but like a mildly concerned stranger offering a coat. You drift and dream of warmth, of fig cakes and summer wind and sun-warmed rivers in places you've never seen, but desperately believe must exist. Somewhere, maybe, the Mesopotamians are dreaming with you. You wake up because something is too quiet. Not the good kind of quiet, like a baby finally sleeping, or the satisfying click of a door locking behind you. This is the "did the world end while I was asleep" kind of quiet. The storm has passed, the wind is gone, but the silence it leaves behind is eerie, like even the snow is holding its breath. You sit up, peeling yourself from the heap like a half-baked loaf of bread. Your hair is plastered to your head, your blanket is damp, and your legs have forgotten how to leg. The dog stretches beside you, shaking snowflakes off his fur that probably came from inside the house. You shuffle to the door, open it slowly, and stare. Everything is white, utterly, overwhelmingly white. The fields, the trees, the cart you forgot to bring in last week, all blanketed in a thick, shimmering layer of snow. Your breath fogs as you exhale a single word: nope. It's the kind of snow that demands your attention, your labor, and your grudging admiration. Every step outside today will be a workout, and every chore will take 3 times longer. But still, it's beautiful, annoyingly so. You step outside, sinking knee-deep almost instantly. You curse the heavens softly, just enough that they don't take it personally. Today's task: clear a path, find your things, and try not to fall over. The snow is both fluffy and treacherous. Every third step hides a patch of ice or an ancient rake. You nearly twist your ankle 5 times before reaching the woodpile, which now looks like a snowy grave mound. You dig and dig and dig. Eventually, you unearth enough firewood to last half a day. You count that as a victory. As you trudge back toward the hut, you notice something odd: a line of perfectly circular prints in the snow. Chicken tracks, followed by no chicken. You follow the trail, wondering if you're about to witness history's first poultry abduction. Instead, you find the bird inside an old clay pot, staring at you like you're the one behaving strangely. You carry it back, muttering apologies. Back at the hut, everyone's up and moving, bundled in mismatched layers that look like they were designed by a sleep-deprived scarecrow. Someone's boiling water for tea, blessed tea, with the faintest memory of mint, and the scent is enough to make you cry. You share your firewood. They share the tea. Bartering like this is second nature. No coin, just need. You glance at the calendar scratched into the wall, just lines and dots, really. It says midwinter is near, the halfway point, maybe. Historians still argue about how medieval peasants tracked time in winter. Some relied on feast days and moon cycles. Others probably guessed. You guess too, constantly. You're never sure if it's Tuesday or cold day in a 39. Inside the hut, You begin your next major winter operation, repairing clothing. There's a pile of tunics and socks with holes in places that shouldn't exist. You sit down, grab your needle, and try not to jab your thumb more than twice per stitch. The child who once warned you of the ghost foot watches you work, fascinated. You show them how to thread a needle, how to knot it tight, how to curse quietly when it tangles. They try, they fail, they try again, and you feel a strange flutter of pride. The world outside may be a frozen abyss, but in here, your hands are useful. Your warmth matters. Later, you help reinforce the thatch roof, patching weak spots with fresh straw and bits of woven mat. You climb carefully, boots crunching against icy beams. From the top of the hut, you can see the whole village. White-roofed homes, smoke rising in thin columns, people moving like bundled shadows. It's beautiful. It's small. It's yours. And as you drive the final reed into place, you whisper thanks to the gods, any of them, for holding the roof through the night, even if it did leak a little, even if it still smells like goat. By sundown, the snow starts again. Soft this time, gentle, like winter's apology. You smile, a little. You head inside. Tomorrow you'll chop more wood, mend more socks, dig out the path again. But tonight, the fire crackles a bit stronger. The stew tastes a bit saltier. And the heap has a better blanket. You crawl in, exhale deeply, and close your eyes. The dog shifts closer. You are warm for now. You dream of sunshine. Not some poetic glow through clouds, real sunshine. The kind that warms your bones, makes your clothes smell like fields, and turns river mud into something that might just pass for a spa treatment. In your dream, it's harvest season again. Your arms are sore, your back aches, but the wheat is golden and your belly is full. Birds chirp, bees buzz. You almost start crying right there in the dream. Then you wake up, and it's still winter. Of course it is. You peel your eyes open. A crust of frost has formed around the window, delicate as lace. Pretty. If you weren't so cold, you could cry icicles. You look around. Everyone's still asleep, bundled and burrowed. The dog is gently snoring into someone's armpit. A good place to be, honestly. You push off the blanket and rise. It's chore time again. Today's mission? Water. You need it to cook, to clean, to survive. But the water barrel froze over days ago. You're down to a few icy chunks that barely melt over the hearth. You've already licked snow a few times this week, and honestly, it's getting weird. You step outside, face the cold, and march toward the stream. It's not far, just half a field away. But every step is treacherous. The snow crunches. Your boots slip. You curse under your breath, wondering why humanity hasn't invented fur-lined skis yet. You reach the stream. It's frozen, of course, but not entirely. A thin crust with dark water rippling beneath. You break through the ice with a stick, chip a small hole, and lower your bucket. You do this as quickly as possible, mostly because you can't feel your fingers anymore. Once full, you sling the bucket back over your shoulder and trudge back to the hut, knowing most of it will slosh out before you arrive. Inside, the fire is blazing stronger than usual. Someone must have used that old stool as kindling. Rest in peace, stool. You served admirably. You pour the water into a pot and set it to boil. That's when you notice it. The smell. It's a peculiar mix of wet wool, garlic, something vaguely sweet, and burned flour. You raise an eyebrow. Something's cooking. Turns out someone's trying to bake flatbread again. It's not going well. The dough is too cold, the pan too hot, and the result looks like something between a weapon and a coaster. You take a bite. It's chewy, but edible. And when you're living in a hut made of sticks, edible is basically gourmet. Someone suggests making more, enough to trade with the neighbors. A bit of salt here, a swig of oil there, and you might be able to swap two breads for a chunk of lard, or, if you're lucky, an onion. You start a little production line, kneading, rolling, slapping dough onto the griddle. The child insists on shaping one into a chicken. It burns immediately. Still, laughter spreads like warmth. For a moment, the cold feels manageable. That's when the door creaks open. A neighbor, red-cheeked and snow-dusted, bursts in with news. The miller's roof gave in. You all freeze. The miller lives at the far edge of the village. A strong roof, good stonework. If that one fell, then anyone's could. You and two others bundle up, grab ropes, and head out. Emergency repairs are a village-wide affair. No one survives winter alone. The miller's home looks like it's been punched by a particularly aggressive cloud. One side has caved in, snow and beams scattered everywhere. They're fine, shaken but whole. Their grain sacks, however, are soaked through. You jump into action, hauling what you can inside, covering the exposed rafters, piling up snow along one wall for makeshift insulation. It's sloppy, frantic, and freezing, but it's effective enough. By the time you return home, your hands are numb, your sleeves soaked, and your mood somewhere between exhausted and if one more log rolls off the fire, I will scream. But there's hot stew waiting. Lentils, mostly. A few carrot chunks. Possibly a rock. You eat in silence, grateful anyway. Historians still argue whether peasant communities shared resources by tradition or pure desperation. Maybe both. You don't really care what the answer is. All you know is that when your roof caves in, you want someone like you on the other side of the hill. Night falls again. You dry your socks near the fire, patch the soles of your shoes with scraps, and tuck into the heap once more, already dreading tomorrow's frost. But as the flames flicker and someone starts humming a lullaby that's more rhythm than melody, you find yourself smiling. Just a little. Because somehow, you've made it another day. There's something almost magical about midwinter stillness, but only if you're not awake for it. Unfortunately, you are. Again. The fire's burned low, the embers pulsing faintly beneath a layer of ash. You swear they're mocking you. Your toes are numb, your breath curls in front of your face, and the heap has become a war zone of elbows and passive-aggressive blanket theft. You rise slowly, trying not to disturb the delicate balance of body heat and grudges. Your knees crack like old wood. Your spine performs a symphony of complaints. You shuffle to the hearth and add a few sticks, just enough to coax out the embers without waking the entire hut. And then, silence. the kind that hums in your ears, the kind that makes you question whether you're alone in the world, until the dog lets out a fart and rolls over. Comforting. You decide to stay up for a bit. Stretch your legs. Think about nothing and everything all at once. You sit by the fire, sipping tepid water, watching as the darkness outside shifts to a paler shade of nothing. Soon, it'll be time for your favorite chore, latrine duty. You tried to build a new one last week, dug the hole, staked the walls, but then the wind knocked it sideways, and now it leans at an angle that implies it's plotting something. Still, needs must. You slip outside with a torch, boots crunching over snow, and make the pilgrimage. You hum a little tune to ward off the cold and whatever forest spirits might be lurking in the trees. Once the job is done, quickly, painfully, with a strong sense of existential reflection, you return to find someone else already stoking the fire. A bleary-eyed uncle with wild hair and even wilder theories about weather spirits and owl curses. He tells you today's going to be colder than ever. You nod solemnly. Then immediately change the subject to the upcoming village feast. Feast might be too generous a word. It's more like a mutual soup event. But still, it's something to look forward to. A break in the monotony. A reason to swap stories and stale barley cakes. You talk with the others about what you can contribute. A dried apple here. A spoonful of preserved garlic there. Someone found a turnip shaped like a saint and refuses to cut it. You offer to make griddle cakes. Burnt, yes, but it's tradition now. By midday, preparations begin. You sweep the floors with a straw broom that's more suggestion than tool. You hang a few scraps of cloth for decoration, bright colors that almost look cheerful in the firelight. Then come the guests. Wrapped in cloaks, faces flushed from wind, laughter clinging to them like snowflakes. They pile into the hut one by one, bringing offerings, stew, bread, a single piece of dried meat that's passed around like treasure. You all eat slowly, reverently. It tastes like effort, like survival. One old woman tells a story about the time her father wrestled a bear. Someone else insists it was actually a drunk cow. You all laugh, because who cares if it's true? It's a story. A young boy performs a little dance near the hearth. He nearly trips over the dog, but recovers like a professional. There is polite applause, possibly tears, and for a moment, just a flicker, you all forget that it's freezing outside, that your shoes are cracked, that the roof still leaks, that you're living on hope and boiled lentils. You are warm, not because of the fire, but because of each other. As the feast winds down, someone brings out the village flute, which is really just a carved reed that makes more suggestions of music than actual notes. But you clap anyway. You even try playing it. It sounds like a goose being mugged, but you do it with flair. Later, the guests drift off into the snow, cloaks drawn tight, lanterns swaying like tiny stars. You wave them off, cheeks stinging from the wind, but heart unexpectedly full. Inside, you scrape the last bits of stew from the pot and store the bones for broth. You lay out your patchwork blanket and settle back into the heap, full in a way that goes beyond food. Historians still argue whether these peasant gatherings were religious, social, or purely practical? Maybe all three. Maybe none. Maybe it doesn't matter. Because tonight, something sacred happened. Something no tax record or royal decree could capture. Joy. You close your eyes and smile. The wind can howl, the snow can fall. But for now, you're not just surviving. You're living. You wake up to warmth. Not the sweaty summer kind, not even the nice bath kind. Just the faint, fleeting sensation that for once, your breath doesn't turn to ice mist the moment you exhale. You open one eye cautiously. The fire's going strong. Someone must have gotten up in the night and fed it. Possibly the dog. Possibly a ghost. Either way, you are deeply grateful. You stretch out like a cat near the hearth, joints popping, toes cracking, spine protesting every inch. A luxury, really. The others stir slowly. Blankets shift. Groans echo like a tired choir. Someone sneezes dramatically and insists it was the draft. Another claims they heard wolves last night, or monks, or possibly both. You wrap yourself in a cloak and head outside to greet the day, and promptly trip over a pile of frozen laundry. You forgot about the laundry. Yesterday, you washed a few tunics, socks, and underthings in a basin of melted snow, then hung them out to dry. It was sunny, briefly, but now they're frozen solid. You lift one, and it stands on its own like a very cold, very judgmental scarecrow. You bring them inside, prop them near the hearth, and pretend that was the plan all along. As you wait for your clothing to thaw, you take inventory. Food. Low, but not desperate. Wood. Enough for a few days. Mood. Cautiously optimistic, with hints of sarcasm. You decide to tackle a chore that's been haunting you for weeks. Fixing the fence. It's not glamorous. It's barely even functional, but that rickety barrier keeps the neighbor's goats out, and more importantly, your own goats in. Armed with a hammer, a few warped nails, and a prayer to whatever minor deity governs carpentry, you trudge to the edge of your land. The fence is sadder than you remember. Some posts have collapsed entirely. One has been used as a scratching post by something very large and probably rude. You set to work, fingers numb, cursing gently. You hammer, you patch, you improvise. And then the sky changes. It starts as a flicker, just a ripple of shadow across the snow. Then more. The clouds thicken, the wind shifts, and within minutes, the world dims. You know that look. A snow squall. Fast, brutal, brief. You drop your tools, grab your scarf, and sprint back toward the hut. The snow slams into you like flour from an angry baker. You stagger inside, slamming the door behind you. Everyone looks up, blinking. You look like a yeti that got into a flower fight. After peeling off your outer layers and wringing out your gloves, you sit beside the fire and just breathe. The storm screams outside, but in here, you're safe. For now. Someone passes you a cup of broth. It's mostly water with one brave lentil, but it's hot, and that's enough. While the squall howls outside, stories start flowing again. Someone tells the tale of the ghost that lives in the old well. Another insists they once saw the village blacksmith eat 6 eggs in one sitting. You're skeptical. The blacksmith, after all, is only human. You add your own story. How you once scared off a fox with nothing but a shoe and a spoon. The details change each time you tell it. That's half the fun. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had storytelling traditions distinct from elite mythologies or religious texts. But honestly, they'd argue less if they sat in a freezing hut for 2 weeks with nothing to do but invent increasingly absurd tales about demon chickens. By nightfall, the storm clears. You peek outside. The world is hushed and powdered once again. The stars come out, sharp, cold, and infinite. One of them shoots across the sky. You whisper a wish. Nothing fancy, just enough warmth to make it to spring. You go back in. Everyone's already burrowing into the heap. You join them, sighing as the warmth wraps around you like a spell. The dog flops beside you. Someone mutters in their sleep about cabbage. You smile, because today wasn't easy, but it was enough. And tomorrow, that's tomorrow's problem. You wake up with straw in your hair and a goat licking your ear. This is not a metaphor. The door was left ajar, just a crack, and one of the younger goats decided to make itself a house guest. It's standing on the hearth now, looking supremely confident, as though it belongs here, and maybe always has. You sigh. Shoo it gently. The goat nibbles your sleeve in protest, but eventually wanders out, trailing a bit of your dignity behind it. Another day, another test of your peasant patience. You start your morning with the usual 3-step ritual. 1. Attempt to stand up. 2. Question your life decisions. 3. Check if there's any porridge left. Surprisingly, there is. Cold and congealed like porridge always becomes when left alone too long, but it's sustenance. You eat quietly, watching the others stir. There's a lightness today, a strange sense of optimism. Maybe it's the return of sunshine, slanting through the window in hazy golden beams. Or maybe it's because today is the bath day. Yes, bath day. Not for everyone, of course. You take turns, lest the water and dignity run out. But today's yours, and your turn only comes around once every few weeks. So you'll take it. The bath is not a luxurious affair. It's a wooden tub near the hearth, filled with water painstakingly boiled from snow and carried one bucket at a time. It's shallow. It's questionable. It smells faintly of turnips and ashes. But it's warm, and that makes it divine. You strip down, shivering, and lower yourself into the tub. The heat prickles your skin like needles, but then relief. Muscles sigh. Your back, used to hauling firewood and fixing fences, begins to loosen. You almost fall asleep right there, chin on your knees. The others give you space. Not privacy exactly, but space. Respect. Even the dog looks away, which is practically a blessing. You wash your hair with leftover soap made from animal fat and ash. It smells bad, but less bad than you, so that's progress. Once you're clean and vaguely steaming, you wrap yourself in the nicest wool you own. You feel reborn, like a soggy phoenix rising from the ashes of rural despair. Someone compliments you on your clean aura. You accept it solemnly, like a knight receiving a sword. Freshly bathed and slightly smug, you decide to take a walk around the village, just to stretch your legs and show off your slightly improved hygiene. The snow is crusted with ice, glittering under the sun. You pass neighbors hauling hay, chopping wood, or repairing carts. Everyone moves a little slower in the cold, but there's a rhythm to it, a quiet competence. You pause to chat with the old weaver, who's outside untangling a mess of yarn with the fury of a person who's seen too many winters. She tells you about her latest project, a scarf long enough to wrap around two people at once. For warmth or revenge, she says. Haven't decided. You make a mental note not to cross her. Farther down the path, you find the communal oven still warm from early baking. A boy is there, turning spit cakes on a stick over the embers. He offers you one, slightly burned, slightly sweet, with a crunch of ash. It's delightful. This is how medieval villages pass time, slowly, unevenly, in shared tasks and accidental kindness. You notice someone's laid out a board game of sorts, flat stones, carved tokens, and what might be chicken bones doubling as dice. You join in. You win, barely. Your prize is a frozen apple. You eat it anyway. Historians still argue whether medieval games were more about skill or superstition. You're just glad it didn't involve actual chicken sacrifice this time. Back home, the mood has shifted. There's music now. If you can call one person thumping a pot and another humming off-key music. You sit near the fire, freshly scrubbed, legs sore but content. Someone tells a story about a baker who once used a magic bean to sleep through the entire winter. Another says they are the descendant of that baker, and frankly, could use another bean right now. You volunteer to make more stew. You even offer to not burn it this time. It's a simple thing. Onion scraps, lentils, whatever dried herbs you can find. But as it simmers, the whole hut fills with fragrance. Everyone leans in closer, as if the scent itself brings warmth. You ladle it out. You eat in companionable silence. And as night falls, you notice something strange. You're relaxed, warm, clean, fed. You made it through another day with all your toes, most of your sense of humor, and only one goat-related incident. That's what survival looks like here, not some dramatic battle with nature, just one small victory at a time. And tonight, as you curl into the heap, wrapped in the faint scent of smoky soap and onion, you sleep like someone who has earned it. You wake up not because of the cold this time, but because of noise. Specifically, the sharp clatter of hooves and a distant, unmistakable shout. Make way! You scramble up, eyes still heavy with sleep, and peer through the frost-crusted window. Down the path, kicking up slush and mud, comes a visitor, a rider. Now, in the medieval peasant world, unexpected visitors in winter are about as common as fresh figs. And when they arrive on horseback, wearing a cloak with a clasp that shines, you know it's not your cousin from 2 villages over. You open the door. Everyone's already outside, squinting in the morning sun like startled mole people. The rider dismounts. They have that noble yet damp look, fine boots splattered with mud, beard neatly trimmed, eyes that scan the hut like they've never slept beside goats. They announce, without flourish, that they're a tax collector's assistant, here to take account of livestock and collect grain offerings for the Lord's stores. The mood dips like bread and soup. You all exchange side eyes. Last time the assistant came, half the village ended up missing their best chickens and 2 bags of barley. You watch as the visitor pulls out a scroll and begins inspecting the area. He eyes your roof like it might owe taxes too. You stand awkwardly as he points at your goat. That one looks well fed. She's just fluffy, you respond, trying to shield her with your body like a peasant bodyguard. He shrugs and jots something down. You sigh. Then comes the grain inspection. You and the others haul out your sacks of wheat, oats, and what might generously be called miscellaneous seeds. It's not much. It never is. Still, he counts. Measures, notes. You hand over a small sack, less than they asked for, but all you can spare without going hungry. He raises an eyebrow. This for the records or the rats? You smile, with teeth. He takes it and moves on. Historians still argue whether tax collection in the medieval period was a formalized system or closer to daylight robbery with paperwork. From your side of it, it always feels like the latter. As the assistant prepares to leave, you notice something curious. A parchment flutters from his satchel. You step forward and pick it up before he notices. It's a decree. Recent. The Lord has raised levies again. New quotas. Increased tithes. You don't mention it. You just hand it back. Let him discover that later, preferably far from your doorway. Once he's gone, the village slowly exhales. Someone mutters, "He didn't even take his shoes off." Another swears the tax man once stole their broom. To lighten the mood, you suggest a walk to the nearby woods, where rumors say wild mushrooms grow, even in cold weather, if you know where to look. You and a few brave souls set out with baskets and sticks. The snow crunches beneath your feet, trees creaking softly overhead. It's quiet, peaceful even, until someone yells, "I found one!" And you all descend like a flock of hungry chickens. You gather a handful, tiny delicate things clinging to bark, the kind that might be edible, or might make you think the trees are talking. You choose carefully. You also find a rabbit snare, set by someone smarter than you. It's empty, but it gives you ideas. Back in the village, you clean the mushrooms. The fire roars as a new stew begins to bubble, this one tinged with something earthy and mysterious. You try a taste. Not bad. Possibly magical. Possibly hallucinogenic. Time will tell. As evening falls, the village gathers again. You all complain about the tax assistant, about how his horse looked smug, about how his parchment smelled like perfume. You joke that next time, you'll hide your goat in a barrel. Someone mentions the old stories, how once, long ago, a peasant girl tricked a taxman by dressing as a ghost and scaring him into forgiving the entire village's debt. You nod. Sounds like a plan. Historians still debate whether rural resistance ever took the form of costumed haunting. But if it didn't, it should have. Later, after bowls are licked clean and laughter has softened into yawns, you settle into the heap. The fire crackles quietly. Snow taps at the roof like a lazy drummer. And despite the visit, despite the missing grain, despite the constant uncertainty, you feel something unexpected. Pride. You navigated the day. You fed your people. You even managed to hold on to your goat. And that, in peasant life, is a kind of triumph. You pull the blanket up to your chin and smile into the dark. Because tomorrow is another day. And you, strangely enough, are ready for it. You wake to silence. Not the good kind, the kind of silence that's too quiet, where the world feels like it's holding its breath. No wind, no clatter, no chickens complaining, not even the goat. You sit up slowly. The fire is out, a small puff of ash and sorrow in its place. The air is so cold you can see your breath hovering, unsure of what to do next. You shuffle to the door, crack it open, and immediately understand. Snow, not a dusting, not a cute flurry of blanket, a quilt, a full medieval duvet of snow, deep, heavy, and unapologetic. Everything outside has been buried in white up to your knees, maybe higher. You step out, instantly regretting it. Your socks soak through in seconds. You let out a noise that is neither dignified nor printable. The dog looks at you with pity and returns to his goat-shared bed. The others wake soon after. There's a collective groan, like the entire hut has developed arthritis overnight. This kind of snow is not just inconvenient, it's paralyzing. No wood chopping, no foraging. The well is frozen. The path to the village is invisible. Even the outhouse looks like a distant dream. You all gather inside, wrapped in layers, trying to strategize. Today is not a day for work. Today is a day for preservation. You assign roles. One person is in charge of melting snow for water. Another will tend to the fire, which must now be kept alive like it's a sacred relic. You're on food duty. This means taking stock of what's left, making the most out of almost nothing, and pretending it's gourmet. You find a few root vegetables, a bit of flour, the last of the dried herbs. You set to work, making a snow day stew, also known as whatever this turns into. As it cooks, the hut warms slowly. The smell lifts spirits. Someone even produces a tiny piece of cheese hidden in a sock. Don't ask why or how. And with food comes storytelling. You sit around the fire, sharing memories of winters past. Someone talks about the infamous freeze of '84, when the river turned to glass and a cow got stuck mid-step. Another remembers the year the ice cracked and swallowed a whole barrel of pickles. The sadness still lingers. You recall the time you tried to ski using barrel lids and twine. You ended up in a snowbank, upside down, and mildly famous in your village for a week. Historians still argue whether peasants developed makeshift winter sports or simply endured boredom with style. You suspect it's a bit of both. To break the monotony, you suggest a game. Someone carves a circle in the dirt floor, flicks buttons across it, and declares rules that seem made up on the spot. You play anyway. It's competitive. It's ridiculous. At one point, the dog wins. You all accept this. Later in the day, the roof begins to creak. Not ominously, but enough to remind you that weight is building above. Snow. Heavy, wet, and not particularly loyal to physics. You gather tools and head outside to brush it off, slipping and cursing as you go. Climbing onto a slanted, icy roof isn't smart, but neither is sleeping under 10 tons of snow. You shovel carefully, rhythmically. Every scoop feels like survival. Below, someone's heating stones near the fire, wrapping them in cloth for makeshift bed warmers. It's a small trick, but it helps. You return, frozen to the bone, face red and fingers twitching. They hand you a warm stone. You nearly cry. By evening, the wind picks up again. The hut groans, wood tightening against cold. You light a few candles, their tiny flames dancing in defiance of the frost. Dinner is thin soup and crusty bread that someone accidentally sat on. It's still the best meal you've had all week. And tonight, something unexpected happens. One of the younger villagers stands up and begins to sing. It's not grand, it's off-key, but it's real. A simple melody about spring and fields and the color green. Others join in, hesitant at first, then stronger. The whole room fills with voices, cracked, tired, but alive. For a moment, the cold disappears. For a moment, the world feels full. You wrap yourself tighter in your cloak, humming along, eyes half closed, because no storm lasts forever, and even the deepest snow can't quiet a village that sings. You wake in the dark, but this time not from cold, or goats, or tax collectors. This time, it's the quiet, crackling sound that draws you back from sleep. The fire's still alive, barely. A soft ember glows in the ashes like a sleeping eye, and beside it, someone's curled up, keeping vigil. You don't speak. You just nod. In winter, firekeeping is a holy duty. The storm has passed. You can tell from the silence, not the dead, heavy kind like before, but a light one, peaceful, like the world has stopped shouting for a minute. You stretch, limbs stiff from a night spent curled like a comma. The heap shifts with you. Someone groans and immediately pulls the blanket over their face. The dog yawns dramatically. You step outside, and there it is. Sunlight. Pale, weak, a bit indecisive. But there. And everywhere, the snow glitters. The world looks scrubbed clean, like someone took a giant broom to it overnight. Chimneys puff gentle smoke. The rooftops sag under soft white layers. It's cold, yes, but there's a clarity to it now. You take a deep breath. It hurts your nose, but it's worth it. Today is not for planting or mending your feasting. Today is for repair. The hut needs patching. The shed door fell off again. The chicken coop is leaning at an angle that suggests betrayal. So you and the others get to work. You hammer, haul, tie things back together with bits of rope and resolve. No one complains. There's a quiet energy, cooperation, born from knowing you've all made it this far. You pause occasionally to sip something warm, a mystery tea brewed from old herbs and a bit of leftover ale. It's an acquired taste. During a break, someone points out the tracks in the snow, tiny, hopping ones, then larger ones, maybe a fox, maybe just the dog's dream life. Either way, it's proof that life still stirs beneath the surface. Midday, the sun is brighter. The snow begins to melt in hesitant drips. You hear water moving for the first time in days. A glorious, wet symphony. Inside, someone finally decides to clean. Now, medieval cleaning doesn't involve bleach or scented candles. It's more like shake the straw, swat the dust, hope for the best. You sweep with a broom made of twigs and authority. You find things under the sleeping mat, mysterious things, a spoon, a dried beet, A sock that doesn't belong to anyone. Keep it, someone says. It's probably lucky now. You nod. Into the lucky pile it goes. After the cleaning, after the repairs, after one minor argument about where the firewood should have gone, you gather outside. The entire village, wrapped in cloaks, laughing about nothing, holding cups of warm broth, squinting into the winter sun. It's a celebration without dancing, a feast without food, a victory without a battlefield. You survived the storm. That's enough. Someone plays a simple tune on a flute carved from bone. The sound floats over the fields like smoke. It's haunting, beautiful. You close your eyes and sway, letting it carry you. Historians still argue whether such moments, quiet, private, communal, ever made it into the written record. Most didn't, but they happened all the same. And for you, they're the most important part. That evening, back inside, you help prepare the last of the turnip stew. You share a hunk of bread the size of your fist. Someone tells a ghost story that you're almost sure they made up on the spot. You finish the night writing in a small scrap of parchment you keep hidden, your own little diary. Just a few words. Enough to remember that this day happened. Because when you live like this, day by day, storm by storm, it's easy to forget that survival is its own kind of history. You slip the parchment away, pull the blanket up. The fire is steady, the goat is sleeping, and outside, the snow is melting. One slow, gentle drip at a time. And now, as the long winter night stretches quietly across the landscape, you let your eyes fall shut once more. The fire's glow flickers gently across the walls, casting slow-moving shadows that dance like old memories. The last whispers of wind have gone still. Outside, frost clings to the windows, painting delicate spirals, icy tattoos made by nature's softest hand. You breathe in the air, dry, smoky, with a hint of baked roots and wool. Around you, bodies shift and settle, the room pulsing with the rhythm of quiet sleep. A faint snore rises from someone across the hearth. Even the goat lets out a sleepy sigh, deep in its dreams of green pastures and stolen hay. The hardest days are behind you now. The storm, the hunger, the tension of bare survival, they've all folded into memory. The kind of memory that grows softer over time, edged with strange comfort. You'll tell stories about this winter, embellish the cold, laugh at the tax man, maybe even sing that silly snow song again, come spring. For now, there is only warmth, the gentle hush of night, and your heartbeat slowing with the silence. Maybe tomorrow will bring more snow, or sun, or visitors. Maybe not. But tonight, the world asks nothing more of you. Just rest. The bed of straw beneath you is rough, but familiar. The blanket smells of wood smoke and thyme. Your limbs melt into it all, heavy and still. And as your breathing deepens, you fade with the firelight, each flicker a final lullaby, each ember a slow-burning promise. You survived. You are safe. You are home. End of script. Sweet dreams.